Hi, everyone. Welcome to Esoterica's The Interview. Thank you for tuning into our podcast today. And I'm here with Esoterica's Leah Eichler, the founder, and with Alison Maclean, publishing executive and consultant. We're so happy to have Alison here today. So let me just tell you a little bit about Alison Maclean. She has been in the publishing industry internationally for many years now. Some of the highlights of her career include 13 years at Wiley, where she was vice president of content infrastructure. She's also worked as director and professor of the creative book publishing graduate program at Humber College. So she was really the person to go to kind of learn how to work in this industry. I first met Alison back in the early 2000s when she was working a lot in cookbooks. So she is a real trailblazer in the area of cookbook publishing too. And currently Alison is working out of the UK as a senior associate for technology and content at Maverick Publishing Specialists. So she's a consultant to the publishing industry. And here she is to offer some of this consulting expertise to us today. So welcome. Very great to be here with you, Alison.
Thank you, Susan and Leah, for inviting me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Excuse me, still getting over my cough here. So Alison, maybe you can start off by telling us how it is that you decided to begin and continue a career in publishing.
Well, I will, and this won't surprise you at all. I'm sure this is a story that is often told. I have been an avid reader since I learned to read. And Susan, I know you share this propensity for reading whenever there's a free moment. I've always been like this in my life. So it also won't surprise you to learn that I was the editor of my high school yearbook. And then I went into, you guessed it, comparative lit, which is my undergrad degree at U of T. And when I graduated, I had a brief stint working in PR, which was deeply unsatisfying to me. And I knew somebody who was working then for a literary agency here in Toronto. And that person said, we need an intern. We really need some help. Would you be comfortable? Would I be comfortable working with authors and publishers in this internship role? Well, I just never looked back. I mean, I love the conversations that take place in the publishing realm. I love talking to people about big ideas. I love the fact that publishing always has a unique set of problems, right? Every book is different. Every publication is different. It carries with it its own unique set of problems. So the novelty, if I can make a bad publishing pun, novels, the novelty is it's the only thing that's constant about the business is the change, right? Everything is different.
It's so interesting. I mean, I think we can all relate, and I'm sure anyone who tunes in can relate, that books and reading is what inspired us to start the magazine and launch the podcast, because this is what we love to do. But the interesting thing about publishing, as long as I've been following the market, which has been 20 years, is it seems to be always in turmoil. Like every year it's in turmoil. Every year is like, this is the end of fill in the blank. I mean, how is that for an insider? I mean, how does that feel on your part? And what are your thoughts on the doomsday naysayers, the doomsday sayers, I suppose?
I do have thoughts about this because I used to begin any time I was teaching. I mean, even prior to heading up the program at Humber, I would always say to aspiring publishing professionals, you need to understand now that the sky is always falling in publishing. Right. And this has been the case for thousands of years. Right? From the movement from carving tablets to inscribing parchment and papyrus to parchment to printing presses, the sky is always falling with every new technology. with every new arena in which you can get access to reading as well.
Right.
There have been always like panic-stricken weepings and wailings. Think about things like when big box stores started, right? We thought that was the demise of the bricks and mortar bookstore, and in some instances it was, right?
Yeah.
There were some smaller businesses that were subsumed by the giants.
Right.
Amazon's entry to the scene, like the famous frenemy of publishing, both customer and competition. The end of publishing was nigh, and so backing up just for a minute, just to reiterate that reality that anytime there's a change that affects the publishing industry, it is heralded as a disaster. And so far, nothing has really killed publishing. People like to engage with long form text. We like to read and learn and entertain ourselves through long form engagement. And I say long form text because, ebooks also another herald of the demise of publishing. That's just another format. And what we know now is people very often read in a number of formats. They engage with the same text often on their phone and on their books in physical manifestation as well. So there is something pleasing about engaging with long form text.
Yeah. It's never going to go away.
It's persistent.
Right.
Yeah.
It's persistent. So what's it like working in-house? In-house disasters tend to be more situational,
right?
Rather than overarching. But solving problems, dealing with the latest, the crise du jour, as we used to say, is that's just the reality of the business. So you have to have a certain resilience and optimism, I think. I know for myself, I really need to resist cynicism.
Right.
Which I do.
That's great. Wow. What are some of the highlights? Because you have done so many different things. When you look at your career to date, what are some of either the books you're most proud of or the moments that you enjoyed the most?
So a couple of things really stand out from my deep history. During the years when I was working on Canadian cookbooks with the very brilliant Robert McCullough, and I have to name check him here because he's the trailblazer in cookbook publishing, not I. But working with food professionals, real innovators like Jamie Kennedy, for instance. I worked extensively with Anna Olson, and these are people who care so much about what they do, and they're innovative, and they have a loving relationship with food that is really exciting for someone like me. Working on books with people who aren't necessarily writers, but who know so much more than I do about food. Big highlight. Another big highlight for me was working on I was lucky enough to be hired initially at Wiley to work on the Vancouver Games, the official publications of the Winter Olympic Games. And then a couple of years later, I was seconded to work with Wiley UK on the London Olympic Games.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So what's going on there that's so exciting isn't just the high profile aspect of the programs. It's that there were severe constraints, right? Very, very challenging deadlines, immovable deadlines, massive high stakes with the suite of books, and an enormous challenge in terms of the publishing partner, right? Working with Olympic committees is no picnic.
Right.
But challenging and really exciting. I have loved working even briefly with some of the greats of Canadian letters. I've edited essays by Mordecai Rickler, among others. And feeling as if you're part of a continuum. I mean, I'm not a literary publisher nor a literary editor. I never have been. My career has been far more commercial than that. But I love the sense of being part of a continuum of a great. tradition.
Wonderful.
That was a bit of a geyser.
No, it's amazing.
Things. Now, I mean, so we touched on the highs and the lows, but what do you see? Are there trends that you can see bubbling up under the surface now that will either be major obstacles or major benefits to books and publishing or readers?
I think that the massive presence of social media provides a very, very fertile ground for ideas,
right?
For books, collections, the themes. So I'm going to call them themes rather than trends, because trends are so, in my view anyway, trends are kind of fleeting. There's a danger in grabbing onto something by the time you've got that content corralled and published. The gaze of the world has moved on. But I think there are subject areas, and there are also influencers in the small I version of that world. There are people out there who are promoting ideas, sharing ideas, and those ideas, I think, are ripe for exploration in longer form. I think it's very, very fertile, and coming up with good book ideas has always been a challenge and a pleasure for publishers.
Right.
The fact that you can now identify people who have platform, they have built-in followers who could be the potential market for longer form explorations for books.
There's definitely people I follow, on Twitter mostly, but who I would buy anything they wrote, just because they're so fun. They provide me so much delight on a daily basis. Like Daniel Ortberg, his Text from Jane Eyre was one of the earlier. That's a couple of years old now, but one of the things you first see online, and then you're like, yeah, I'll buy this book.
And there's a lot, right? There's a lot that you could say, gosh, if this writer had a different pace or a different extent for their ideas, would people buy it? Think about somebody like Rupi Kaur. Poetry, famously a money-losing proposition in publishing, right? People publishing poetry are doing it for love, not for profit. And suddenly there is a form that is of interest to millions of people, and there's a long tail to that, right? There's all kinds of poetry now that is being published successfully and getting to a wide audience and making money. So I don't know if that answers, but I see social media as a huge boon to the publishing industry, as opposed to the people, the naysayers who are saying, well, if everybody just wants little content snacks now, who is going to read books? I think the opposite is true.
The end of the world.
So there are platforms, and we're on that platform as well, like Substack, and there's a lot of chatter on Substack about syndicating, about eschewing the whole publishing industry and just syndicating yourself. I mean, what are your and there's some really successful writers there who syndicate themselves. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on it are that publishers need to earn their corn. I think that the previous position that some publishers enjoyed as kind of gatekeepers of culture, that's an antiquated idea now. The value that publishers offer to some authors is the curation, the editorial development, I think is a big boon for some authors. Also the reach, right? The ability to use the marketing machine and the long tendrils that some publishers have to bring works to the attention of consumers. That's something that's difficult to do on your own. And there are lots of stories of long tail successes that authors have had self-publishing, but it's tough to do without infrastructure. It's tough to do well without infrastructure.
You hear about the success stories, but not so much the thousands of authors publishing without any readership at all.
Exactly, because few of us are able to be excellent writers and excellent promoters,
Right.
and excellent packagers. There are some who are. I think publishers have an ongoing role to play to help with those aspects that not every author is able to handle themselves successfully. Yeah. There's a cost to that, though, and the cost to that is control. Right. Speaking as now a published author, ta-da, I can tell you there's tension there when there are creative decisions being made that you don't necessarily agree with.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your what did you publish and what was the conflict?
Oh gosh. Having ghostwritten dozens of books, I have in recent years been very privileged to be invited to partner with Dr. Jason Fung, Canadian nephrologist, who is one of the early entrants into the benefits of intermittent fasting as a boon to health in a number of ways. And his publisher, Greystone in BC, asked me if I would provide some recipes for 2 cookbooks that they published as companions to Jason Fung's original works. So they're health related. So one is the Obesity Code Cookbook, and the second is the Diabetes Code Cookbook, which is the Diabetes Code Cookbook is a really very beautiful book. The food styling, the food photography, just gorgeous. So there you go. I've Greystone will be happy with me because I've named them and both of the publications.
Wonderful.
I mean, it's interesting. So that's amazing. I'm also curious if you can talk about your ghostwriting experiences, because there's a lot of writers who supplement their own writing with ghostwriting.
Yes.
And how has that experience worked out for you?
How has it worked out for me as a ghost?
Yeah, how do you enjoy being a ghostwriter? Oh, did we freeze? We froze. Uh-oh.
Alison's frozen here, but maybe she puts the ghost in ghostwriting.
Ghostwriting in a second.
But she will return. I'm always very curious about what it's like to subsume the writerly ego in someone else's byline and someone else's acclaim.
Right. Yeah. Well, I also think it's, fascinating to be immersed in someone else's writing process and, how that actually works to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And actually, I don't know. And I guess there's a vanity or lack of vanity in just attributing your work to someone else's name too. So
she's going to come back, I think. You've been approached about ghostwriting before, and what factors into your decision making?
Well, I think I would take on, it has to be a project that you're you have to be so fascinated with the subject that you'd be willing to dedicate 6 to 8 months of your life to focusing on that project. And so there aren't, I haven't been approached by that many people that are that interesting or have that interesting a story. But when you do, it's definitely an appealing idea. It's a built-in subject rather than, let's say, fiction or memoir and having to come up with all the information on your own. So that's actually been very helpful in deciding. Would you ever ghostwrite, Sue?
I would, but it would have to be someone I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
But I think there could be one of the best autobiographies I ever read was Andre Agassi's Open.
Right.
And it was ghostwritten by a man named J.R. Moehringer.
Right.
And Agassi is very generously, acknowledging and thanking in his intro. That book was very well written. And I was excited to see that the same person is ghostwriting Prince Harry's memoir. It's going to be a good read. That they're going to be able to take this tons of information and plop it into a really recognizable form.
Have you read, would you read, are you going to read Harry's memoir? And I'm not even sure if it's out yet.
Yes, I am going to read
Of course you are, because you are a royal expert. So yes. Are you looking forward to it?
I am looking forward to it. And I may pick an audio version. I often enjoy autobiographies in audio form.
Right.
Yeah. Has Alison popped back?
She hasn't rejoined yet, so we'll give her another few minutes.
Okay.
But have you, speaking about the royals, have you seen the
documentary? I have.
Documentary? Oh, she's
back. It was
back in.
Oh, here's Alison.
Hey, Alison. We went on a tangent about ghostwriting. So yes. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
Internet gone altogether, so I hope we're stable now.
We're still stable.
I caught Susan saying Alison puts the ghost in ghostwriting. Very clever. I love it because I am originally an editor. That's right. First was my role in this business of publishing, and ghostwriting is an ability to, not necessarily a writer, help the author to let their meaning shine through, help them to realize their intentions with this content. And so I love it. I think I like ghostwriting actually better than writing.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It feels to me like it's the best kind of editing.
Right.
The most fully realized kind of editing. And again, as an author, I have experienced editors who are, by the way, every editor is a writer. We have to be, right? We have to be. And I know both of you have had your content edited before, so I'm interested in what you've experienced. But I have experienced someone with the best of intentions, just smoothing right over, like spreading butter, smoothing right over any of my personality.
Right.
My quirks, my goofy, admittedly honey sense of humor. I've experienced that before, and it doesn't feel
it's doesn't feel good.
It's not a happy partnership.
Yeah.
Not a creative partnership at all. But when you get a good editor who understands what you're trying to do with your work, that's the best kind of creative partnership. That's really fun. That's fun.
And you read it and you're like, ooh. One of my most painful professional experiences was early on. I was getting a lot of famous Canadians to write about other famous Canadians for Time magazine, Time Canada. And they would write these personality-packed small pieces about Canadians they admired. And then Time being Time, it had a real style. And the editor in charge of that project just wrote, edited and rewrote them all. And the authors were so kind of crestfallen in some cases, because they'd be like, but this is like one of my, heroes I'm writing about, and I just sound like a reporter,
Right.
It's a real art to keep the voice while making it polished and powerful.
Well, it's interesting. I also tell writers all the time, especially writers who get, multiple beta readers for their books, or, work with editors, that especially, Susan and I, we both, grew up as journalists. So, on one hand, it's easy to just as a journalist, you just throw it to an editor, and whatever they change, you're like, okay, and then you move on. But it's a very quick, and there's not a lot of attachment with your own writing. It's such a skill to be able to discern when it's helping and when you're just capitulating, like when it feels good and when it doesn't feel good. Because exactly as Alison mentioned, sometimes it doesn't feel good, but you want to defer because you think editors know best, but sometimes they don't know best. And so you really need to be able to make that distinction.
I think, if I may, especially as women, we want to please our editors. We don't want to create too many ripples. There is a kind of gendered response to this as well. And you really need to, which is also maybe gendered, you need to look at your gut response to an edit.
Right.
And ask yourself whether you're just rolling over, you're capitulating because you want to go along to get along, or whether that's going to bug you, whether that's, and if you listen to yourself, an apostrophe can matter. right?
Sure.
Can matter.
So
Word
true.
choice matters. You need to decide for yourself, and don't be. It's your name that's going on it.
Exactly. It's your
So
name.
don't be so humble or so amenable that you will allow changes to be made that don't actually make you happy or don't fit your vision. Like, be a troublemaker if you need to be.
I
I
love that.
love that.
I know. That's going to be our pullout quote for this interview. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. So, Alison, the Christmas holidays are coming up. What are you during your break? What are you going to be reading?
Well, I'm really hoping that somebody is going to give me Maggie O'Farrell's The Portrait of a Marriage. Have you read it, either of you?
Love it.
I'm really hoping I'm gonna be gifted that. If I'm not, I'm gonna buy it for myself.
All right.
Because I do love to sink into Maggie O'Farrell. Also, full disclosure, always on my bedside table is something by David Sedaris. There's a certain mood in my life that can only be
Fed by that. Yes.
fed by that or soothed by that.
Yes.
By David Sedaris. And yeah, I was thinking about this, thinking also I always have something by Ali Smith within reach too. These are the writers currently that I'm obsessed with. If you haven't read A Song of Achilles.
Oh, I did read that. Love.
I haven't. Yeah. Okay, now I know what to add to my list.
Let me press it into your hands.
Okay.
Susan.
Amazing. Amazing. Right. Yes, totally.
Amazing.
Maybe a reread time as well.
I think it might be. So again, that's the kind of book that I will reread.
Yeah. Yeah, I think during the holidays, sometimes when things are crazy and stressful, rereading can be very comforting.
I think it often is. Are you women who read Middlemarch once a year? I know
I read Jane Austen at least all the novels at least once a year. Yeah.
There's very few books that I read. I have reread a couple of books this year, and Sue and I are actually considering having a regular series called a reread, where we go back and reread even books from our childhood and see how we think about them now. But I mean, I've reread. I mean, we've chatted about this before. I have reread, like, really, we're talking like YA books. Like, I've reread all the Flowers in the Attic series that I loved when I was a teenager. I was just curious. I just remembered all of my friends being so obsessed with it, and now as my daughter approaches that age, I was thinking, yeah, I'm pretty surprised. I'm actually a little bit surprised by how bad some of it is, and so it's interesting to go back.
But compelling, even though maybe not well written in every place. Did you feel compelled?
I finished all of it, and they're not short books, but the interesting thing is, you kind of wonder, which we'd like to tackle and reread, is would it get published now? I mean, there's so much of it that the incest, but not only the representation of incest, or but the perception that it was desired, or even the young girl having a sexual fantasy or a sexual interaction with a much older man, but she's the instigator. I mean, I just don't think these things would play well in 2023, but it's just fascinating going back and thinking that that's what we read when we were 12, 13 years old as well.
Yeah.
So
formative.
I like the idea of a rereading series.
Yeah, I like the idea. For me, I think of books that I read when I was like a fiery university student, really angry at the white men, dominating the syllabus. And I kind of want to go back. The one I keep saying I'm going to reread, but I haven't yet, is Rabbit Run by John Updike. Because that one infuriated me. And I'm like, would I still be infuriated, or would I be like, it's a picture of humanity, just happens to be a male from his point of view? Or is it as wildly sexist as I remember? We'll see.
Well, Alison, we'll have to have you back next year where we do our rereads.
Yes, the reread series.
Pick a book, and we can all maybe it'll be Middlemarch, although that would take me a little while. But
please count me in. It's
okay.
I want to speak with you today.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Alison Maclean. And this is our last episode for the year. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And there'll be a lot. We have big plans for 2023, and we can't wait to tell you all about them. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everyone. And thank you, Susan. And thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Leah. Bye-bye.